Session as authorized by Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.001 concerning purposes permitted by the act, including 551.071 consultation with attorney, 551.072 deliberation regarding real property, 551.074 deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignments, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an employee. So with that, 4:32, step into a closed session. 4, closed session. Next is community input, and I don't think we have any, so we're good there. So next up are our closed session action items. So I have a motion.
Yes, Mr. Cottrell.
Yes, sir.
I move that the board approve the superintendent's recommendation for Director of Instructional Design, Ms. Monica Jufrey.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. And we don't need a second on that. So all in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed?
Mr. President,
Yes.
we do need to stop for any comments or debate.
Do we have any?
I don't, but
We'll double check that. Thank you. All right, so next up, item B.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
I move that the board accept the approval of a recommendation from the superintendent for the elementary principal of Belinda Garcia.
Thank you, Ms. Cheka. And open it up for comment. Any discussion? No? All right, all in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, any opposed? Thank you very much.
Mr.
And with
President?
that-
Yes, I'd like to give a little bit of background. First of all, our Director of Instructional Design, Monica Jufrey, has been a leader in instructional design in Clear Creek ISD for a number of years. She brought the initial concept of Leader in Me to Falcon Pass back in 2017. And since that time, we have 12 schools that are now Leader in Me campuses, and we're excited to build our own internal capacity to continue the journey as a Leader in Me district. And she will spearhead that. Our goal is to build a framework on what we've learned and support the implementation of our Vision 2030 goals under the leadership of Ms. Jufrey. So thank you for that. With Ms. Jufrey leaving Falcon Pass, that does open up a position there, and so we'll be transferring Susie Saunders to Falcon Pass Elementary. She's been at Hyde for over 5 years, and she was formerly an assistant principal at North Point and a teacher at Brookwood. So we're very excited to have her leadership skills moving from Hyde to Falcon Pass, and then that opened up the opportunity at Hyde for Belinda Garcia, a long tradition of service in Clear Creek ISD, an assistant principal at Mossman. She's currently serving, and she's been 3 years as a bilingual assistant principal at League City Elementary, and she's also served in that capacity at Landall, and she was a counselor at Stewart and a teacher at Landall. So a lot of background in the district for Ms. Garcia. So we're excited for her to bring her talents to Hyde Elementary. So thank you for all of those changes.
Absolutely, thank you. And very exciting to see them in action. They're great. So next item, do we have a motion for the Human Resources report?
Mr. President,
Yes, Trustee Will.
I move that we accept the monthly Human Resources Board report.
Thank you for that. And I'm pretty sure we don't need a second, right?
Nope.
Make sure. All right. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? Thank you, Trustee Bowen. All right. Next up, we have our budget goals, assumptions, priorities.
Yes, and Mr. President, each year the board meets to develop the goals, assumptions, and priorities that will drive the upcoming budget process, and administration developed the budget priorities from a number of sources and presented them to the board through the Friday packet information. And these sources include teachers, administrators, parents, cabinet, community, and business leaders. And the goal of this agenda item is to discuss the goals and priorities for next year with a final approval potentially at the June board meeting. And Ms. Benzai is going to lead us in that discussion. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. So I have just broken down the goals, assumptions, priorities, and budget risk for you. But before I jumped into that, I wanted to put up the summary of the general fund budget projections for next year, just as a refresher from our prior meetings. I did at your desk have the document that we looked at during our last work session with the budget. And of course, next year we were projecting a $17.4 million deficit with a further increase in that deficit the following year. We have those costs returning to our budget, those ESSER expenditures. And so on the document that you have in front of you at the table, this is similar to what you saw a few weeks ago, but I did pull out some assumptions. One of the things I did last time on your document at your desk, I had some funding included from state revenue, potential state revenue from legislation. We have pulled that out because at this point there's been no modifications based on what the legislature has done. So I did not include that as additional revenue. I also, based on that discussion, left in the 3 golden pennies and the 1 golden penny from board approval. And then going further down, I removed expenditure reductions, and I kept in a 2% potential salary compensation increase for next year. So this is what the numbers end up looking like. You'll see there's about a $1.3 million deficit for fiscal year 24 with that additional tax revenue. It's very close to being a balanced budget with that. And then, but we still have the projection for the following year with a reduced deficit, but still a $16.6 million deficit. So I just wanted to put that out there as I've modified those assumptions since our last meeting that we had. So moving on, I'll just start going through the document, the budget goals, assumptions, and priorities, the draft. I haven't made any changes since we met last time, and so I'll just read through it, and if you have any suggestions or modifications that you want or things that you'd like added to it, we can definitely do that. So the budget goal for next year is currently the 23-24 budget will further CCISD's mission and strategic plan with financial integrity, maximizing benefits from available resources. And I think everybody is probably okay with that. Okay. And so these are our budget assumptions. We did speak a little bit about the first one at our last meeting, meet budget requirements without accessing more than 20% of capital and contingency reserve funds. So in this particular document, with the additional golden pennies, we would be closer to having a balanced budget for next fiscal year. And so that may be an area, that may be a line that you want to modify. Do you have any, is that something you want to strike, or?
I think a lot of this is so contingent on those golden pennies, and so I think we have to start with I think assumptions are kind of all about revenue, right?
Yes, and that's also a budget risk, because if that doesn't go through, then that's a risk that we would have. So you'll see that later in this document is a risk.
And so I kind of think the not accessing more than 20% of capital and contingency reserve funds, that probably belongs, I know we've never done it this way before, but there's a lot of things we've never done before that we're having to do. I think that should go in the priorities section. Assumptions should, I think, be all about what we know we're going to do, and priorities are what that allows us to do. So if those assumptions don't come through, then obviously we have to start looking at what our priorities are and maybe not being able to fulfill all of them. But that's kind of my feedback there. But I would say that given that, I think we are projecting that, and I'm looking at the most recent version we have here. So, this doesn't incorporate any of the other smaller changes we're making that probably could make up a $1.3 million gap that remains after these, after the golden pennies and then the salary increases. But I think we should assume and strive for, if all of these things get done, then we need to have a balanced budget. And that means not accessing capital and contingency as a priority. And especially if we're going to talk to voters about why they should approve golden pennies, then that needs to be part of the pitch. This will balance our budget. And so I think if that's something we're going to go out and ask for, it's also a commitment that we should make.
Okay, I can move that down to priorities.
Can I ask a question, I guess, with regards to that? Is there a way that we can have it somewhat both? Because I hear what Trustee Bowman's saying, and I'm thinking on the assumption, what is, on average, what is the amount percentage-wise that we do access that capital and contingency fund?
So the 20% was what we had for this current year. So it's, we started with about 50 million and we plan on no more than, I think it's about 9.8 million. So it's about, right now, running a little under 20%.
So I think kind of, yeah, and I thought 18 was the number that I had in mind. So is there a way that we can assume, we can find a way to maintain that assumption, but also make it a priority in another way of putting it out there?
I think if some of the risk that we have with the tax rate not going through, then we would need to be able to access, utilize that to access that. We would probably come forward with a budget amendment to the board to amend the budget at some point during the year after November. But I think if we can put that our assumption is to, especially with what we're looking at revenue-wise, our goal really is to get it as close to balanced as we can. And what I'm reflecting is it's pretty close to being balanced because the deficit is so small next year. So I don't, we can definitely put something in assumptions as well, but put our priority is to have a balanced budget.
Were you going to say something else?
I think that kind of covered it. Yeah, I was just maybe going to say historically, we have balance in most years. I think it was the last 2 years or the first 2 years in quite a long time that we actually did dip into the contingency fund. But obviously the reason the contingency fund exists in the first place is because we had some earlier years where they exceeded expenditures and were able to save money. So yeah, I think if we can balance it and avoid dipping into it, we should.
All right, the second assumption is to manage the district's resources efficiently and effectively, including identifying ways to increase revenues and or decrease expenditures to achieve a balanced budget by 25-26. So that would ultimately be the goal. We may be able to, with that, this additional revenue be able to balance for next year, but we know that the following 2 years are projecting to still have deficits. So we would need to continue to be looking at our future 2 years to see what the state's going to do, what we may have to do additionally on revenues, and ultimately expenditure reductions as well. So does anyone have any comments about that one or any feedback? Okay. The next assumption is to retain the 5% local homestead exemption. So that is included in our current budget numbers. That decision, if that were to be eliminated, that decision would have had to been made by the end of June. So that would be a board decision. So we are recommending to leave that homestead exemption as is for this next year. The other assumption is to utilize all golden pennies, which require only board approval to provide access to state enrichment funding. And so that is the one additional penny that would bring the board approved pennies to 5 on our tax rate with and that would max out basically all the pennies that the board had the ability to approve through board action. The following assumption is voter approval of additional pennies through a voter approval tax rate election in November. I did not quantify the pennies here. I can, that's what the board's desire to do, is to set those pennies right now of what you want to assume in the budget, or if you want to continue that conversation during the budget process this summer.
I think we had talked in our workshop about wanting only golden pennies, not the copper pennies.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that
I think
putting
she's
a
asking
specific
the quantity.
amount, a quantity on it, I think we need to have more discussion, right, and get more numbers, right?
Well,
Or are we prepared to recommend a number there?
Yeah, I mean, we're technically not voting on this yet,
Right.
but I think we kind of coalesced around the 3 golden pennies being what we would ask voters for.
Right.
Okay.
So going ahead and putting that in there for now.
Yeah.
Is where we're at.
Okay. All right. Right. As it currently stands now, that maxes out the golden pennies, the 8 golden pennies. The next is to incorporate recommendations from the CCISD Strategic Budget Sprint Team. So we will, we've built some of those into our budget numbers, but some of those are also items that we'll see as we go through the year how much savings we can actually identify from those and be better able to quantify those things.
On this one, can we add a little specificity? Could we say incorporate cost savings and enrollment growth recommendations?
Okay.
Or enrollment and attendance growth? Just because there were also recommendations that had to do with the revenue side, and I think that's really not what this bullet is getting at. I think this is more about the other domains.
Which really the budget sprint team did have cost reduction and revenue generating. So maybe just kind of in general, because there's not a specificity. I'm trying to recall all of that from the budget sprint team, but we're still in the process of investigating enrollment and that type of thing. But there definitely were budget reduction and revenue enhancement recommendations for both.
I think putting that wording in ties in the attendance, because that attendance is from the revenue.
It is. Mhm. Is that detailed enough? I mean,
Yeah, well, I think that's too detailed, or that's everything. And I would like for this to not refer to the area that we've kind of covered already, which is specifically taxation. So, yeah.
And we could revenue enhancement measures, including enrollment and attendance growth.
Okay.
that's good. Yeah, I see.
Savings or revenue generation.
So work on the wording for that.
Okay. And the next assumption is developed using a realistic and defined average daily attendance for the fiscal year, assuming an enrollment loss of 300 students per the demographic study. And so the numbers that you're seeing include basically a 300 student reduction in our state funding. And then finally, maintain an adequate general fund balance is defined as 2 months in fund balance in board policy. So are there any modifications to these or any other assumptions that the board would like to include?
I hadn't thought about it until now, but loss of 300 students, okay, that's enrollment loss, that's not ADA loss.
Right.
Okay, never mind.
Do we need to assume an 88 percentage? Like maintain?
Well, that depends on how we want to
I mean, you have
address
the loss,
that.
but do we still try to maintain that, what are we, 93.3, 94?
Well, what assumption did you use in this?
I used what we ended up with this current year. So it was, I believe, around 93.8%. It's not up at the 95% where we used to be, but still on so anything we get over and above that will be additional revenue.
So does this assumes the 300 student enrollment loss and then even attendance?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So do y'all want to add anything with an 88 percentage, or do you go with this?
I think it should be mentioned. So maybe the assumption would be that we stay flat, and then if we end up growing, then that ends up being helpful to us.
Flat on attendance?
Attendance
Okay.
percentage.
Would,
Well, I thought maybe it should mirror the superintendent targets.
We just haven't said all of that yet. You know, that'll be a discussion in August, but that's very valid. So maybe that language.
I think the budget is developed based, the numbers are trying to be conservative using the lower attendance rate of where we ended up this year, but in the wording on the assumption that you're using reaping the savings or revenue generation from attendance growth and enrollment growth, that seems like that would incorporate what we're trying to do to build our attendance rates up.
Yeah, I think we should address that maybe as a superintendent target, but I'm not sure how to fit that into a budget assumption. And we can't really assume, I don't think, that we're going to be successful at a certain percentage. What percentage would be successful at? 1%, 0.5%? I don't know.
What if instead of assumptions, we put it under priorities to like increase ADA enrollment or attendance?
Yeah, well, that makes more
Not
sense to
necessarily,
me.
you're not assuming it, but you're gonna make that a
you're making it a
priority, that we
priority.
wanna focus
Yeah.
on getting that attendance number up.
I think that's a better place
So
for
adding
it.
that under priorities instead.
and align with superintendent targets, making it a priority.
Okay. All right, anything else on assumptions? Okay, so moving on to priorities, we have, we will add a bullet about the, moving
contingency.
the top assumption about capital and contingency down to priorities. And then provide, and I'll come up with some wording for the board meeting for the approval. Provide optimal and targeted levels of funding and staffing for improved student achievement to meet the goals identified within the strategic plan. We have to administer competitive salaries, stipends, and benefits for all employees. Continue to sufficiently fund the Safe and Secure Schools program, including student support and counseling services, and maintain the capital and contingency fund reserves consistent with other budget priorities. Leverage excess reserves and existing funds for financial support to meet current budget challenges.
I think that second to last one can probably go away after you move down the assumption.
Okay. And I like the last one because that we'll still be utilizing the final year of ESSER funds built in with our budget, so that fits into that priority. Okay. Any other suggestions for budget priorities? Okay. And then finally, we have our budget risk. We have spending required by unfunded state and federal mandates, failure of voter approval tax rate election in November, student enrollment or average daily attendance comes in below projections. We have the inflationary impact of fuel, property and casualty insurance, and other commodities that might provide or require increases during the year after the budget's approved, inadequate funding to meet the needs of Clear Creek ISD students, and then potential risk of sustainability of current programs. So I think that covers most of the risk that we have in the budget.
That last one, I think that's been part of the document for several years running, the sustainability of current programs. But what does that actually mean to us? I mean, does that mean programs can't be continued because students don't enroll in them, or they become too expensive, or maybe there was a funding source that went away? Is there something more specific that we're trying to drive at there?
I think it probably incorporates all of those in very generic terms. Of course, as we go into the year, the actual budget year, we've committed to the programs that we will have in place already. So it really probably looks beyond the budget year next year as the future of sustainability of those programs.
Do
I mean,
we-
I think a good example was the science magnet, looking at the transportation. So like parts of those programs that we weren't if we weren't able to fund them and needed to cut things, so they looked at, maybe cutting out transportation at one point. So I think those types of, that's the way I read it, is it's sustaining the current way the program operates and those resources we have to offer for them.
Well, and, whether it's that program or the question I was going to have is, do we know when this was added? Because, when I hear program, I'm thinking Leader in Me. I'm thinking programs that are funded by our services and some of those, like Leader in Me since 2018, I think it was a 2017 grant, went into effect in 2018. So a program like that is only sustainable as long as we ourselves and our partners are able to continue helping fund it. So that is a risk on their end. They're getting funding from, the cities and Rotaries and things like that. And so if their funding stopped, then our funding would stop.
Yeah, or what I think about is if we had a program that was originally designed for 500 students and it's down to 30 students, but we're still resourcing it like it was for 500 students.
So that's a different
Right.
kind of sustainability.
So-
That's a participation versus funding.
Yeah,
That's-
but if something gets to the point where it's way too expensive for the small population that are in it, then
Agree. So we good with leaving it?
yeah, I'm fine leaving it. But I don't know if there's
Not
maybe
sure.
alternative wording we could think about to better capture what we're trying to do there.
I believe it's been in there for a while.
Well, and we're not voting on this till the end of the month, so maybe if there's something that comes to mind on,
Yep.
If we had quality, like the sustainability of the quality of programs.
well, then
I guess.
potentially get into measurable factors. How do you measure quality anyway? We'll brainstorm.
Okay, that concludes all of the budget goals, assumptions, and priorities. If there's, unless there's anything else that you'd like to add or modify.
So what we can do is do a draft update and put
Yes.
that in the Friday packet.
Yes.
So we'll have that for review.
And that way, if anybody comes up with verbiage or questions, we can have that thrown out there before our board meeting. So,
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mizai, thank you very much. All right, we ready for next? Our Facility Advisory Committee, initial recommendations. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, we are very excited. I'll just kind of thank the chairpersons up front. On May 1st, they provided just a brief, update, but no recommendations at that point. So this is our first Facility Advisory Committee initial recommendations for your consideration. I just want to thank our co-chairpersons, RJ Boatman, Bill Steinhoff, and Monica. We are Monique Bailey. Monique, we are absolutely thrilled with the work that y'all have done. They have provided outstanding leadership throughout this process. The committee held its first meeting on April 4th and met every Tuesday since then through May 16th. The membership was open to the community and a random drawing to represent every campus. As well as Board of Trustee members were appointed. Former Facility Advisory Committee members were there to lend their wisdom on the committee also, as well as administrators, teachers, and a couple of students. So we had an excellent committee. The work was intense. I'd like to thank staff. Many staff are here for supporting that. Committee members, thank you so much. We have some FAC committee members here with us. All committee members were people of goodwill, worked extremely hard, asked thoughtful questions, and of staff and of each other to really get to some excellent recommendations and some work. So I'm grateful for your leadership, the integrity through this not always easy, somewhat challenging process. This committee is really a shining example of putting all students, looking at, we've always talked about, igniting learning for all. And we are so grateful for that focus and the commitment to service before self. So thank you all. And I was going to say too, if it's okay, committee members, would you please stand? Thank you. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, but really, we are so grateful for the work. And I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Boatman, I believe, Ms. Bailey, and Ms. Stein. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. And thanks again for allowing us to participate in this very necessary and worthy cause. I don't think there could have been a better effort for us to be involved in than our children and the quality of their education. So if we go to the first slide, it talks about our charge. And as you well know, our charge over the next 3 to 5 years was to make recommendations to the Board of Trustees concerning the timing, the funding, and the priority of our capital projects. And the next 2 slides really detail out the committee membership and the meeting dates. And as Dr. Engel said, we are proud to report that the committee has been extremely professional, dedicated, conscientious, and hardworking. As you will see in the following slides, they came to a few conclusions. And the first one, if we are to expect exemplary performance from our children, we must provide exemplary facilities, resources, and instructional teams. And 2, we all believe that CCISD students deserve a quality of education to the best of the district's abilities and to be most prepared for higher ed, technology, and trade careers. So at this time, to get into the detailed processes and outcomes, I'm turning the presentation over to co-chair Bill Stein.
Thank you very much. And just to reiterate, I think this was an amazing experience for all 3 of us, but also
We got it.
I really think this was an amazing experience for the 3 of us to take this charge and lead this committee. And it was an amazing experience. On the last evening, we all broke into 3 different rooms. And so it wasn't just one of us up there talking on the last night, trying to get a consensus out of, all those that were in the room at one time. We broke off and had separate sessions. And in those sessions, we allowed voices to be heard, conversations we're having, and it was an amazing experience. We got to listen to people that normally wouldn't talk out loud into the bigger room. They might have felt intimidated or whatever it was, but it was really enjoyable to hear everybody have an opportunity to speak. And then in each one of those rooms, we came to the same level of consensus. In my room, we got a little bit farther than the same level of consensus. We got a little more done, and that was awesome. And so it was really a great experience. It was super rewarding, I would have to say, but also an amazing experience to listening to everybody's voices as they were talking. So in the 3 different ways, we all came to this consensus, and the main focus in each room was the idea that everywhere that you live in this district should provide the same level of education. There shouldn't be one school that is not a have school. I've worked in a school district, I'm also a teacher by trade, and I've worked in a school district where it was gerrymandered by status. And there was the have, and then the have not, and the have not, whether you live not part of the district, it was what it was. And CCISD should never be that. Monique gave a great analogy of, if you're going to sell your house on one part of the district and you move to another, the quality of education for your kids should not drop because of that. And so in each room, as we kind of brought that same thing up in different ways, that was the main focal point of those discussions. And so that's where what you're seeing here on this graph is what happened in Monique's group, in RJ's group, and in my group. And the main thing that kind of we came to in our room was the discussions talking about the additions of the fine arts centers and the band halls, and then we ended up adding those. Click this slide. So then we went on to, these are the main items that go beyond just what was actually on the priority one proposals, because we were able to get through that stuff fairly quickly and moving on to other priorities. And if you can see on here, you'll see this check mark across the board, like the stage lighting for Clear Springs, it was all, we talked about it, was all came to consensus in the room. And as you go down, and even the stuff that, if it had an X, we still end up getting to consensus to it. Like the next thing down, the immediate school, providing the goalpost. It wasn't brought up in my room, we didn't really talk about it, but it was brought up in the other two rooms, so on and so forth. So as you go down that list and all the different things, from that are district-wide or facilities that were presented at different times, because a lot of the stuff was actually not even in the book, and it was later on presented. Like on here, it was not voted on with the district auditorium. It was a little bit too much more than what the room was willing to jump on. And then you have, as we went down, we looked at, it was brought up in the meeting, getting covered outdoor seating area because the lunches are crowded at the high schools. So that was brought up by another teacher that works at Clear Springs, and also one of our student advocates that was on the committee with the students. And they brought up, oh, it'd be great if we had this covered seating area. So that became a thing that we all groups ended up coming to consensus for. And so it was an amazing experience. So this whole process, leading down line by line and showing the stuff that wasn't even originally in the booklet that everybody voted on, and we got to that level. So if we go to the next slide. So here we have the renovations for the aging schools. This was some of our main priorities in the school renovations, student safety and priority repairs section of this bond. And so these are the main these are the campuses that need, a lot of love and major overhauls coming into after this bond. So you have the Clear Creek, Clear Lake, Seabrook Intermediate, which my daughter was a product of, and it definitely needs a lot of love. Armand Bayou, Green Elementary, Green Elementary was one of the schools that we did walk around, and it's amazing to think that down the street you have Hall Elementary, which looks immaculate, and then some kids are zoned to green. It's like, why, that opened up a lot of eyes for the people on the Facilities Advisory Committee of there shouldn't be this disparity in our district. So, next. So we're looking at here the safety systems, the life safety and security, critical infrastructure, priority repairs and replacements. Those were all of the priority ones that Paul and his team and Alex put together this list of amazing priority ones that go across all the campuses around the district and the lifespan of those products. School buses, playgrounds, and then bond issues and project management. Okay. And here was the biggest thing that I think that caused there was a lot of back and forth conversation. We had many meetings about it. I know it was brought to you guys many times. There's the Vision 2030, and this is where it was really awesome to see the consensus on how it got to the point, because at first it was like, we're not sure about what's going on here, and then it led to every middle school campus getting their own facility for this. And that came down to everybody in this district deserves the same level of education, not just if you live here, we're going to build a new facility for you here, but if you live over here, we're just going to take away some classrooms. And the other people in the rooms, everybody agreed this should be, if everybody's going to get it, this is how it should look. Everybody should get that same quality of education and the same quality of facilities for that education. So these were the additions that were added from the major consensus. Each one of these came from the different rooms, and then we added it on, the additional parking at Clear Springs. If you've been to Clear Springs, it gets a little wild west for the parking over there. My daughter was a graduate of Clear Springs, and I've just driving through Palomino Lane and all that during the trafficy times. Good luck. So that was the hope there, is to try to secure some more of that parking. Secured cover outdoor seating at all the high schools, not just one, but for all high schools. But it came out of a teacher at Clear Springs that was looking forward to that. Custodial equipment, was a big add-on. Driveway to Beamer at Westbrook Intermediate to alleviate some of the traffic congestion, expand animal capacity. And this was actually, it came up in the conversation in my room, but I know it came up in others, is the equity between the two ag barns. And I didn't, my children weren't in ag, I didn't really know about it, but knowing how one ag barn is just so much bigger than the other, I was like, well, how much does it cost to just add them? Well, this number. I'm like, well, that's nothing compared to everything that we've signed up for. So that was an easy go for in the room that I was in, but it just makes it so much better for those ag students. So.
I'm sorry, you had the other.
And so then we had just other expenses that came through, but for all this was the school renovations, student safety and priority repairs, all included on that was $552,759,803. So that includes all those renovations, the Vision 2030, all these things that just provide a great level of facilities and education for the students here in Clear Creek ISD. And now I want to pass it on to Monique.
Thank you. All right, as my committee members, co-chairs rather said, it really was a very neat process. We each all have our own personalities, so we led our roles differently, but it was neat to come out and see that we all landed on the same page. In my particular room, we had 2 hours, so for the first hour, I just let them hash it out. And so Paul was in the room with me, and we kind of moderated, but honestly, it cleared away all of the contention because they just wanted to be heard. So when you let this person express themselves and then that person would chime in, it was beautiful just to see how we all could, at the end of the day, agree that number one, we wanted to guard our investments because we're obviously homeowners, taxpayers, and so forth. We wanted to invest in the future of our children by making sure the schools are adequate, whether it's children or grandchildren. For you, it might be nieces and nephews. And then just like Bill shared, I brought up the point that I would hate to be hesitant to move to a different side of CCISD and feel like I'm getting a better house, but not a better school, or at least adequate. And so it was just really neat to be able to come out of the room and say, how did it go? And we're like, you got one, me too, okay, all right. And then even going back to the slide that had the check marks and the different things like that, you can see that even when maybe at first in some rooms it might not have been addressed, we still as a group came to a consensus and said, yes, I'd be willing to invest in that for you. And then, the same thing across the board. So it was very, very enlightening. So to go to this slide, we have our technology infrastructure, we have cybersecurity, network infrastructure, physical security, which includes cameras and life safety, servers and storage, which we all know is so important with different hacks and different things that while we're asleep, some of these entities are up late at night trying to figure out how to cause havoc. So I'm glad we're investing in that. We have unified communications as well. Then in the next category, we have instructional technology with endpoint devices, student one-on-one devices. I'll pause right there real quick. I remember, his name slips my mind, but he leads our robotics. He was particularly interested in that. Wasn't it David Hirsch, I think? Yes, okay, good. David Hirsch, he was particularly interested in upgrading that because he said that for the high schoolers, sometimes they would bring their own computers for the ease of use, but especially at the lower levels when he was trying to administer the same type of instruction to elementary and middle school, the computers were not up to speed. So he said he would spend up to 25% of the allotted time frame doing IT. And so I'm glad that we're going to address that so that he can just go ahead and continue helping us to shine as a district with the robotics. And then we have the teaching and learning technology. And I'm also glad on that. I remember a conversation with Ms. Buffy Johnson, the principal at Wedgwood, and I told her, I said, I'd love for you to talk to your teachers and ask them if they were interviewing today, what were some of the perks that they would love to see in their classroom that would allow them to just really thrive. And so with the teaching and learning technology, I really believe that that will allow those teachers across the district to be able to do that. And then it gives us the greater chance of drawing greater talent. It's kind of like going to Walmart and you can get your oil change and your milk We want that to be like that with CCISD too, that there's more than one thing to offer at more than one school. They can actually we can have the pick of the litter as far as the teachers, but they can really feel there's really a buffet of opportunities here. And I want to salute the board for being willing to be a trendsetter, because if we do business as usual, you also get the same results as usual as well. All right, visual and performing arts. We have fine arts equipment, fine arts instruments, band hall and fine arts renovations at CFHS, band hall and fine arts renovations at CSHS. In the athletics category, we have athletic equipment, priority repairs and replacements at Challenger Columbia Stadium. Now, I will point out that anything with an asterisk will require a separate proposition. Okay, and then we have priority repairs and replacements at Veteran Memorial Stadium, and then also the same thing at high school pools. At the bottom, we have committee additions, emergency lighting at Veteran Stadium, and stage lighting at Clear Springs HS. And so that emergency lighting has the asterisk, so that would also require a separate proposition. And I'll pass it back to RJ for the final slide.
Thank you, Monique. I've always believed that the best elected and most important elected seat to hold is that of school board. Because you not only hold the fate of the children in your hand, but you hold the fate of our future in your hand, because that's what you're building. You're building children. That's your product. And probably the most important commodity in this country. So it brings pleasure to me to tell you that this committee did come to consensus. It did it in whole, it did it in part, and it did it together. It did it as a team. That we believe our recommendation should be right at that, what we call all in. Let's give these kids everything we can. That totals about $614 million. And that's a 7-cent increase, and I know that pennies are important right now. But I also know that that's about $208 per median household per year, and about $16 per month. And I just challenge you to think about what you spend $16 a month on. I know I spend it on a bad meal quite often, wish I had, or many other things, sometimes a bad haircut. But I really believe our children deserve it, and I believe it's our duty, and your duty as their governing board and trustees to provide it. And so we should fight for this for our children. So that's our recommendation. We are here, and we're always here. This is not a one-time show for us. This is going to take a while to get through all of this, and there's going to be many steps, and there may be some, modifications and edits and changes that come along the way. But we're at your, as I said the first time, your leisure and your pleasure, and we're here to work for you. And so we're going to serve as hard as we can and do our best to make sure that our children, because it's always easy to spend someone else's money. This is our money, but these are our children, and they deserve the best we can give them. And thank you very much.
And thank you all very much. So let's open it up. Any feedback from the board?
I was just going to thank you all for, number one, stepping up and serving as chairs on the committee. Bill, we missed you last time when RJ and Monique addressed the board and kind of presented at our workshop a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago, I think it was. But wanted to also thank you for the feedback on the process. A lot of times, if you have not been a part of that process or don't really know about that process, you kind of have some questions in regards to what goes on, what's talked about, how is it, how are things discussed, if the discussion was coerced or anything like that. So thank you for providing that feedback and for giving your opinion about how that was, that was put forth. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Thanks.
Well, we've kind of had a lot of these proposals presented to us already. So I think it really comes down to, we're going to have to think about what we think is a priority for now and what we think might be able to wait, because won't necessarily be the only thing on the ballot, but I do want to make sure that we are respectful of the amount of sacrifice that we really are asking of taxpayers. I mean, I know we all love to do it's just 1 cup of coffee a month routine, but I mean, no single drop thinks it's responsible for the flood. And property taxes are increasing. I know the legislature is working on that, but all indicators are that they're going to continue to increase, and every taxpayer got hit by a massive appraisal increase as well, which this would go directly towards. So I want to make sure we're careful about how we talk about this and really appreciate what we're asking of our taxpayers, because when you add 3 golden pennies here, 7 cents for a bond, I mean, that's a massive growth in what people are paying, and it's going to be paid every single year. So I just think we need to be careful about that and not take it for granted. And I really hate hearing you get 1 steak dinner per month type thing and you could pay for it, because it's more than that, and it's something we're really demanding of everybody, and not everybody is necessarily comfortable right now with the way things are going. So anyway, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about over the coming weeks, but I did want to say that.
And once again, when we talk about it, I hope we also tout the things that our district does in terms of having one of the 3rd lowest tax rates in the state and things of that nature. So our taxpayers do know that we have been cognizant of them in the past, and now we are asking them to make that investment in their community because we have taken care of them in the past. So I want to make sure that we're doing the exact same thing. It's a big story. And it's a lot of story, and there's different sides to that story that need to be told.
Right. Yeah. And our job is to charge the taxpayers what we need to charge in order to operate the district, and nothing more. And so, and when we go past needs into wants, then I think that's when we start overdoing it. And so we just need to be careful, and we need to be careful in the way we think about this, and just remember that. I mean, it is a sacrifice, and we're about to ask for a bigger sacrifice. And so I think we need to be respectful in the language we use and just not take people for granted.
I think, Ms. Bailey, you had something to add?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that we're here to respect people's respective sides, but the same people that sometimes say keep it low would also complain if we don't invest in these young people in middle school. We all know, I have a baby, let's just say that. At the age of 12 going into 13, these same children that if we don't invest in them have the ability to start having a criminal record and be charged as adults. The same people that want to keep it low would also complain if we haven't invested and now these kids have not developed the talents, realized their abilities, and now they're choosing the wrong route when the same person with that broken mind could have got the education that we invested 7 cents for. So I respect your opinion, but this is really a win-win situation. When we're investing, we're all investing at the same rate. None of us are getting a different rate across town, but sometimes in past times, we've gotten a sure enough different benefit. So if we're all gonna take on the same burden, it is going from needs into wants. We need good schools. That's what draws good talent into the district. That's what allows our children to have the right environment to thrive. I said it at the last meeting, we can have the best quality seed in the world, but if I throw the seed on the concrete, I cannot come back and expect that seed to grow at its full capacity. Nevertheless, if I set the stage and I do what I need to do and water it properly, give it the proper nutrients, which is all we're asking to do. We're asking to levelize the district so that you can move wherever you want in CCISD and you know your kid, your grandkid, niece, nephew will thrive. That's all we've asked. And that's why, even though in my room, it got a little bit testy, but I let them work it out. Say what you need to say. We love it. That's why you're in the room. And I affirm that. And at the end of the day, the same people that were testy raised their hand and said, but nevertheless, I would love to invest in our kids. That's what it's about. So when you go back and communicate the information, please let me know what I said. Because if they choose to keep it low, I don't also want to hear a complaint later when other things are out of order. It's now or never. They're at a crossroads. You either invest in them or you end up seeing them derail later. It's like that every day. And what we want to do in CCISD is allow every child to thrive at their full potential to the best of our ability. Will there be PTAs that do extras across town? Yes. But as a group, when I'm paying my tax dollars, I'm glad that I can say I'm invested in my children, my grandchildren, my nieces, my nephews. That's with pride I can do that. It's a need for them to thrive, and it goes into my desire to leave a better legacy behind. That's what we're trying to do.
That's hard to follow.
Go ahead. Yes.
I just want to echo, what Trustee Cunningham said. I appreciate you guys stepping up, and please share that with all the committee members. I know that this time commitment was a lot, but I think it's a very important one. And I love that you stressed that everyone in our district needs the same level of education, and that you guys got to see the example you guys set with Green and Hall. That shouldn't be happening. And so we really do need to invest in those schools to make sure that they are all at the same level. I appreciate everything that you guys have done, and I think this is great.
Thank you, Ms. Cheska. Anyone else?
I was able to get out to a couple of those, a couple of your meetings, and I do appreciate the hard work that everybody put in, a lot of long hours and a lot of travel, and I do appreciate all that. I wanted to mention that you've identified a few things here that weren't in the original the packet that went out to you, and I want to give my thanks for that. I mean, that's really the kind of thing we would want a committee to do, is go out and cut a few things off and add a few things and really show us where the priorities ought to be, and so I'm quite grateful for that. The other thing I wanted to mention was that I didn't see anything on here that I wouldn't want for our schools. Now, want and need, of course, we can debate that, and I'm sure people will debate that all summer. But even if this all doesn't materialize this November, I think it is the genesis for a great long-range plan, and I think you've done quite a service there, and we do appreciate that as well.
Thank you, Trustee Larson. James, you want to add anything? You're good? All right, so thank you. Thank you very much from the bottom of all of our hearts for all your service and time. You're not done yet, right? There's still some things to do, but Ms. Bailey, thank you for your passion. We see it, we hear it, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you. And I know as we all go forward and everything, you'll share more of that passion, so thank you. Bill, thank you for mentioning the importance of keeping the quality across the district. The springs, outdoor seating, and recognizing that we need to keep that mindfulness that what's good for this campus is also good for this campus. I think we all in this room strive to every day make mindful decisions that we want equality across the district. We want the same facilities and programs and the quality of education for all. So thank you for mentioning that, and keep that going forward. RJ, thank you for sacrificing a bad meal in the future. I know it's not something that we can always joke about, but it is true that there are sacrifices that we will have to make. Whether it's the $16 or our property values will go up, and it may end up being more than that as well, and we've got golden pennies to consider. But that is that willingness that you mentioned, that that Monique mentions, that Bill mentions, that the willingness to make those sacrifices for a quality education in the district, throughout the district, for all 40,000 of our students, and y'all's time is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. Is there anything else anybody else wants to say? And we appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, and just has been a part of that and watching that, the conversations, like I said, to go back to the questions and the thoughtful answers. Appreciate, Mr. Miller's up here and all the work that went into getting that information, and then all the thoughtful conversations around it. So we cannot be more grateful for the volunteer time. Volunteer, we can't stress that enough too, just volunteering to serve our children. So thank you so much.
And just, I have one more note, but one thing that I wrote down was you using a phrase, and you said the buffet of opportunities. I love that because, we're trying to quantify the programs that we have and, how many opportunities, and it is like a buffet, right? And some things you enjoy and some things you don't, but ultimately at the end of the day, those restaurants put all the options out on the table and let the consumers decide what they want to take from that buffet. Anyway, when you mentioned that, it's very much like that, and I'm proud to say these are the people that come up with those ideas and put those options on the table for our students, and so it was a great phrase. So
I was just going to say, when you mentioned your daughters don't participate in FFA, but you saw the importance of that program in terms of making sure that the east side has the same facilities and the same opportunities, because it's been known that they bring everything over to the west side to house a lot of that because they don't have the space over there. So just being cognizant, and when we talk about being a trustee, we talk about all 41,000 of our kids. We don't just talk about our subset group or, our homeschool, et cetera. That's why you'll see all of us go to events all across the district, regardless of where we live or if we're at large or if we're over a district. So that's one of the things that we do, being a trustee, is we want to support all of our children. And the next thing I just wanted to ask before we wrapped up, what were those dates again? I was hoping that the dates for the upcoming would be included in the presentation.
Yeah. No, we just talked about the dates that we started with, but
Gotcha.
we're not quite done.
Gotcha.
So, we have probably some board conversation, and then, possibly July.
Okay.
So, thank y'all. Not quite done, maybe. Started on May 1st.
So if I could just say one last thing. We did work hard, and I'm proud of the committee's work, but the real hard work is on you. We just present to you what the committee believes. It's up to you to make those final decisions and go out to the public and try to achieve what you need to achieve. And to that end, I've been a government employee, and most of you know this, all my life. And I've fought for who I served in all of those government positions. And so your jobs really are to fight for your teachers, to fight for your students, and to fight for your facilities, and to achieve that outcome. And we're all about improving the economy, and I get that. But the best way to improve the economy is to invest in the child, and we all know that. And plus, we have a lot of reputation hanging over our head. We are NASA's ISD. We build rocket scientists in Clear Creek. And I'm so proud of that. Why I fought to get my grandchildren here, and why I'm going to make sure this is where my families are raised. So the real tough job is yours. So I'm proud of you for your hard work. And I'm proud that you stand up and fight for these teachers and these kids every day. We're just an asset that I was glad to provide. And we're here, and we want to be that asset, whatever you need.
thank you. And I know, we're not voting on anything, but, unofficially, we officially do accept your recommendations as y'all have presented, and all your time that y'all put into making those recommendations. So your breakout sessions, everything you've done. So we appreciate it, and I know we'll take it forward from there.
And I just wanted to mention one piece too. We've had a lot of input on a lot of different things, including Dr. Bayard has been a part of these conversations and discussion. I just wanted to take a minute, if that's okay, and just thank him for his input too. This will be his last meeting here with us. And so he is moving on to do some consulting and some great things around the area and around the state. So just want to thank him for the work that he's done, not just for here, but for 16 years in the district, the campus and district level, and most especially as deputy superintendent, all the work that you've done. So, and he has been a part of every bit of this conversation all the way through. He's a dear friend and a colleague, a person of integrity, hard work, and is evidenced by being here today and being a part of all these conversations and continuing today to give us input and wisdom and advice. So just wanted to thank Dr. Bayard.
Thank you, Dr.
We got a head.
No, that's good.
I don't think we ever got to vote on that, right?
I know that we have this House bill update, right, that we're supposed to get?
Yes.
And so can we get that done and then come back to Robert? for
Yes, we
more,
can. My mistake. Yes, I was
Thank
so,
you.
yes. I was
You got
so
excited, and
I got
still wanna-
excited, yes. We do have a House bill
Let's get this
that we do want to talk about. I am apologizing for that, yes. And also, I guess I was thinking too, he just worked so hard on this committee and all of these things, and it just connected right away. Not that he wouldn't work hard on House Bill 3, but really, that is going to go to Mr. Miller, Mr. Palazzi, to talk about House Bill 3, and just to give you a brief update before we
Go back to Robert.
start working, yes, go back to Dr. Bayard's input on the other.
All right. House Bill 3.
Good evening. Is this on? No.
There you go.
All right, good evening. I just wanted to provide some information to everybody on the most recent House bill that has not been signed yet, but we're trying to be proactive in the anticipation that it does get signed. It just passed the Senate in the House and it's on the governor's desk. It's in the 88th legislature, and there's some information. I just want to make sure you all have the information because there's some details in it that I don't want to go by without being stated. Again, we're doing this because we believe everyone deserves to be physically and emotionally safe. That's one of our major beliefs at CCISD. Just real quickly, the agenda, I'm going to go over the basics of House Bill 3, the brief timeline of it, how it affects our campuses, the armed security officer requirements, and just basic funding from the state. So, basics, here are the basics. House Bill 3, there's some really good things in it. One of them is there's going to be required mental health training for district employees who regularly interact with students. The districts are going to share students' discipline and threat assessment files with schools, between schools. The TEA is establishing a safety standards and a regional center around the state that is going to collaborate with the Texas School Safety Center. So there's going to be another resource for campuses that need assistance. Again, there's at least one armed security officer during regular school hours at each campus. And the districts are going to be required to share gun safety information with families. Brief, there's a couple other little aspects of it, but these are the major bullet points of the House bill. Here's the timeline. This moved pretty quickly. It was filed on March 9th. There were amendments basically from the whole, from April to May, and then a final vote, and then the House signed it on May 28th, the Senate signed it on May 29th, and on May 30th it was on the governor's desk. It still has not been signed by the governor as of yet. Just some information about our campuses. On the left-hand side, those are our current campuses. We have intermediates, we have high schools, and we have 27 elementaries. On the right-hand side is our liaison officer disbursement between the campuses. We have 4 officers that you see down low that aren't on a campus. Our K-9 unit, who is required, they have scheduled visits. Our money carrier, who was approved a couple board meetings ago, and then we have our lieutenant and our captain. So just our officers, and those are our campuses. If you do see, we have 14 officers that are rotating between 2 elementary campuses. So we have 27 elementary campuses and only 14 officers. So as of right now, if we were to go an officer on every campus, we would be 13 short. What the House bill is saying with regards to the security officer, what they are recommending is that on every campus, you either have a district police department officer, a school liaison or school resource officer, or a commissioned peace officer. You can ask for a good cause exemption for either funding or personnel. If you do that, though, the district must develop an alternative standard. So that's what it's stating in terms of the security officer on every campus. The safety allotment that the state is offering, they are offering $15,000 per campus, which you see the $675,000. To the right, in the light blue, is our average daily attendance safety allotment, which is $367,000. That's $9.72. The state is going to up that to $10. So the little yellow sliver is the extra 28 cents, which is about $10,000. So that's what the state would increase our average daily attendance. So we're getting 15,000 per campus and basically another 10,000. Just information. What we're currently working on is we are looking at options for our security personnel assessments. How, if it gets signed, how would we accomplish this task, and we're also looking at funding appropriation. So we are currently working on that. We're looking at options with the anticipation that this bill does get signed. But we're also going to wait on guidance from TEA and the Texas School Safety Center. There's some wording and verbiage in the bill that probably needs some clarity right now, but we're not waiting on that. We are under the anticipation that this is going to get signed. We know we have the officers we have, and how are we going to be able to meet this while keeping our children safe? Because it's not just about checking a box. You know, we don't want anything to decrease in what we provide right now just to be able to check a box to say we have someone on every campus. In a nutshell, that was House Bill 3. A lot of it is wording, but the bullet points that I mentioned earlier were the nuts and bolts of it. And obviously, I paid special attention to the security monitor on every campus to make sure you guys had all that information. Are there any questions?
Go ahead and open it up.
Yeah, so I had a question about a completely different element of this. So the sharing of gun safety information to CCISD families that is required by HB3, are there any because I mean, I have not read that section of the bill, but kind of what does that require us to do, and how do we make sure that's not interpreted as us collecting information on?
Yes, sir.
On that.
What the bill states currently says that TEA will provide us the information to distribute to families. That's the exact word.
Okay.
They don't say how we would distribute it. They don't say electronically. They don't say mailing. But they do say they would provide the information that we would be required to distribute to families.
Okay. And we would just be distributing. We would not be collecting forms. We would not be.
Based upon their verbiage right now, yes. And I would be under the understanding that it would just be sharing of information.
Thanks.
Thank you for asking.
Anyone else? So I do have a couple of questions, actually. The note on here must develop an alternative standard with which the district is able to comply.
Yes, sir.
Would explain, like, what are some of those alternatives?
They list two alternatives: a Marshall program
Okay.
or a security officer that's approved through other verbiage in the bill, which would be what it says. I don't remember exactly, but it's someone who has the ability to carry a firearm and has gone through the training and school safety training of that as well.
So are they considering, like, the Guardian?
When they
As an
say the
alternative?
Marshall program,
Right.
the Marshall program is considered, the Guardian program is considered, and then there's the Texas DPS program as well. Yes,
So one of their alternative recommendations is arming teachers.
that's one of their alternatives.
And I'll leave that. And then the other question was, so the figure you came up with the pie chart was $1,053,250. Realistically, with 45 campuses and one guard at every campus, do we know what that number looks like?
There's some different options that could occur. One thing I can say to you is that we don't have a specific number for each SLO officer. It's different based upon who is hired. There's level 1s through level 5s through sergeants through lieutenants, and then once they are hired, also they can increase their pay with certifications, with longevity. So it's really a fluid number.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see, I guess, right? I have lots of thoughts, but no other comments, questions, concerns? Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it very much. That is the last item on our agenda. I do want to get back to Dr. Bayer, but should I adjourn first and then we can kumbaya, Dr. Bayer? Should we do that?
No, say it now.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Layla, are we okay? Yeah, okay.
Are we good?
That's
Are we
fine.
good?
Yeah.
Well, I remember right after I got elected, Dr. Ebell, and I brought it up, and I think Jay or Laura was president, and I didn't know what was the right time to do it and everything. So going into tonight's meeting, I'm excited you went ahead and brought it up. Actually, Dr. Bayer, I think I've probably worked with you since CTO days. I didn't know you back when you were the Dean of Instruction at Springs, but I know that you've served this district at the utmost highest level of respect and dedication for many, many, many years. And as long as I have known you, you've been fully invested in educating yourself on every topic, everything technology-wise, curriculum-wise. It just seems like, you're one of those people that's always willing to go the extra mile to educate themselves, to have that knowledge to speak, to the highest level, right? Of every bit of information that has been asked, or every time we turn around and say, look into something, you're like, I'm on it. You've got your pen out and you're always ready to go. As Trustee Check has said, we didn't approve you to leave. I hold on to that, but it's a big loss for us in this district to have you leave. But we support you. As you've supported us and our students and all the faculty and educators and teachers and parents and everybody through all these many years, we definitely support you. We will be sad to see you go, but we wish you all the best, and you'll be missed greatly. So thank you for all your time.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No.
I was just going to say the way you're able to tie in the technology piece to the curriculum piece, to the assessment piece. I think that's what makes you very unique. A lot of people think that they can do that, but the way you do it, the way you're able to explain it, even dumb that down sometimes so we can digest it and understand. Speaks volumes to, what you're able to do and what you brought to the table for us. So wish you well. I know you're going to be fine in your new endeavor. And I know that I will hopefully get a chance to see you since you're going to be in downtown. So good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think, I've known you for the 4 years I've been on the board now, and just that entire time, I've kind of felt like no matter what role you were in, whether it was technology or as deputy superintendent, you've just kind of been having to build the plane as you flew it, and it's really true. I think you level us up in terms of technology in a way that we never had before, and that was definitely unprecedented for this district, and maybe a lot of our peers as well. I think we are a leader in cybersecurity, and that's something that really hadn't even existed in this district before you came on board, and we don't see it a lot. It's not very visible, but I think more and more we're seeing a lot of local governments have issues with ransomware and phishing, and you've just been way out on the forefront of keeping people defended. And I would always notice that the annual technology training seemed to get a tiny bit more exasperated every year. Please, no one's sending you a gift card for free. Karen Engel is not setting up a meeting with you. But and then especially as we got into COVID, and then some of the leadership challenges we had over the past couple of years, I think you really were a rock, and you were a leader for everyone in the district when they needed one, and got us through some real challenges. So I just appreciate everything you've done for us. I think you've really left our district better than you found it in a lot of ways, and I'm sorry we never got to do karaoke, but I just wish you the best in everything that comes next.
Thank you.
So my experience is a little different from Scott's, and when I came here, you were serving as our tech guru. And not long after I got here, the position of the deputy superintendent was created, and I was a little perplexed. I thought we're elevating the tech guy to a deputy superintendent job, and then I got to know a little bit more about you and your background, and I realized that you were really more of a curriculum guy. And then I thought, wait a minute, the curriculum guy was doing this good as a tech guy? So I think that reflects very well on your ability to adapt and take on new roles and run with them and do very well. And I'm very grateful for everything that I've seen you do in the district during the last 2 years. Appreciate it all, and I wish you the best.
Thank you.
This first year has been challenging, and I think Scott said it, you just were a rock, and so I appreciate that, and I do feel like you kind of level up everybody that you come in contact with, and I don't think it's too late for karaoke. We will, because that's on my list too to hear, so I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
I'll save any comments for one-on-one.
For karaoke.
For karaoke.
I'm glad Scott brought up the trustee Bowen and brought up the security training, because we have your voice forever. Anytime, we're not going to redo that training. Every time somebody has to take it, they're going to hear that voice and think about, man, who is this guy? He knows everything about security. And yeah, the first time I took the class, I heard, I think this is Dr. Baird. I didn't realize it, but yeah, it's we're gonna miss you. I call you my friend. You're not just Dr. Baird to me. You're Robert, and I did get the opportunity to see you karaoke. I think we had to pay a guy off actually to make it.
Yeah, to let him sing.
To let him
That's
right,
right.
but nonetheless, we made your dream happen. No. We'll miss you for sure. So, Myra, thank you. All right. And with that, it is 6:18. Meeting's adjourned.